She was drunk when she confessed. Her words, slurred but sharp enough to pierce through me, tumbled out with a cruel ease. I was never attracted to you, and I can't stop seeing other men. For a moment, I couldn't move. Her confession was like a slap, the kind that leaves you reeling, unsure if what you just heard was real. She said it so casually, as though the words held no weight. I sat frozen, the wine glass in my hand trembling slightly. Across the table, her expression was loose, her eyes unfocused. It was clear she was too drunk to care about the impact of what she'd just said. Moments later, she passed out, her head slumped on the couch, her breathing steady and calm, as if she hadn't just destroyed the foundation of everything we had built. I stared at her for a long time, replaying her words over and over in my head. The way she said it, the way she didn't even try to soften the blow. I should have felt anger, maybe even rage, but all I felt was a cold, heavy clarity. There was nothing left to fight for, nothing to salvage. As I sat in the silence of that room, I made my decision. By sunrise, I would be gone. My name is Phil. For as long as I can remember, I've been the kind of man who believes that hard work can fix anything. That's how I was raised. You grind, you persevere, and eventually everything falls into place. That belief shaped every part of my life. My career, my relationships, and most of all, my marriage. When we got married, I threw myself into providing for her, for us. I worked long hours, pushing myself to the limit because I thought that's what love looked like. I told myself I was building a life where she'd never have to worry about anything. When I wasn't working, I was thinking about her, how to make her happy, how to show her I cared. I'd bring her little gifts when I traveled for work, plan weekend getaways to make up for the lost time. I thought it was enough. It wasn't perfect, but I believed love wasn't about perfection. It was about trying, about showing up every day and putting in the effort. But now, looking back, I realize I had it all wrong. In the beginning, everything seemed fine. Sure, the honeymoon phase wore off, but I thought that was normal. Over time, though, I started noticing things. Her laughter didn't come as easily. Her smiles felt distant. She stopped looking at me the way she used to. I brushed it off at first. I told myself she was stressed, tired, maybe just going through a rough patch. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Still, I kept trying. I thought if I worked harder, loved harder, it would fix things. I was convinced that love could overcome anything. So, when I noticed a growing distance between us, I decided to do something special. I planned a romantic dinner, the kind we hadn't had in months. I spent hours cooking her favorite meal. Chicken parmesan with garlic mashed potatoes, a dish I hadn't made since our first date. I set the table with candles, dimmed the lights, and put on a playlist of her favorite songs from when we first met. When she walked through the door that evening, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, surprise, maybe even gratitude. She kissed my cheek, smiled, and sat down at the table. For the first time in what felt like forever, the conversation flowed. She laughed, genuinely laughed, and for a moment, I thought maybe we could find our way back to each other. But then the wine came out. By her third glass, the atmosphere shifted. She leaned back in her chair, her words coming slower, freer, unguarded. She looked at me with a strange expression, somewhere between pity and amusement. "You're a nice guy," she said, swirling the wine in her glass. "That's why I'm here with you. You're sweet, gentle, safe. But you're not my type." I froze. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at her, trying to process what she had just said. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. She smiled a small, almost sad smile and leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "I've never really been attracted to you. Not in that way," she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Then she started describing her type, someone rougher, darker, someone who wasn't afraid to break the rules. The complete opposite of me. And then she dropped the final bombshell. "When I met him, my type, I just couldn't resist. One thing led to another. Her voice trailed off, but she didn't need to finish. I knew what she was saying. I sat there, nodding like a fool as she poured out truths that shattered me. Her tone was casual, like she was telling me a harmless story. There was no apology, no remorse, just justification. She wanted me to understand her reasons, as if that would somehow make it hurt less. But it didn't. That night, lying in bed next to her, I felt no anger, only clarity. I didn't need to yell or fight or demand answers. She had shown me who she was, and I believed her. There was nothing more to say. By the time the sun came up, I had a plan. I got dressed quietly, packed a bag, and walked out the door as if it were just another day. But this time, I wasn't coming back. The first thing I did was call my lawyer. I told him to prepare the divorce papers, to make them airtight. Then I called my accountant. Within hours, he had untangled my finances, securing my assets and ensuring she couldn't touch them. Finally, I called my family. I didn't give them all the details, but I made one thing clear. Don't tell her where I am. Don't entertain her calls. Just don't. A few weeks later, she was served the divorce papers. My lawyer told me she tried to reach out, calls, emails, even showing up at his office. She begged for an explanation, but there was nothing to explain. She already knew why. At first, she refused to sign the papers. She dragged her feet, hoping I'd change my mind. But I didn't. By the time it was all over, I felt lighter. Not happy, not yet, but free. She had shown me who she was, and I had finally chosen myself. She had convinced herself that maybe, just maybe, she could salvage what we had. Or perhaps she was simply afraid to lose the stability I had always provided her. But when the financial settlement was presented, she didn't hesitate. She caved, and I wasn't surprised. It was always like this with her. She prioritized herself, and when push came to shove, nothing else mattered. She signed the papers without a second thought, and just like that, the chapter of our marriage closed. When I walked away from that marriage, it wasn't with any concern for what would happen to her. I didn't care about her future. I just wanted to be free from her lies, from her utter disrespect, and from the overwhelming sense of being invisible in a relationship where I had given everything. I thought, let her have the life she thinks she wants. For a time, it seemed like she did. She threw herself into this new life with all the enthusiasm of someone who had finally found their freedom. She was single, financially secure, and free to do as she pleased. The settlement money, the one thing I worked tirelessly to secure for us, was now hers, and she spent it recklessly, like it was nothing. At first, she seemed to revel in her newfound independence. She spent nights out, bought new clothes, and of course, jumped from one man to the next. I heard her tell friends how she was finally living the life she deserved. Her words almost felt like a taunt, as if the years we shared meant nothing. But here's the thing about people like her. They never looked past a moment. She thought that freedom meant doing whatever she wanted, without any repercussions. Life doesn't work that way, though. Sooner or later, the consequences catch up with you. And for her, one of those freedoms did. She ended up pregnant. I didn't find out from her. No, I heard it from a mutual acquaintance, someone who couldn't resist gossiping. It wasn't a planned pregnancy, but I didn't expect it to be. The father? He vanished the moment he found out. No calls, no messages, nothing. He was gone. She was left to face it alone, once again reaping the results of her reckless decisions. Things didn't stop there. The settlement money she had squandered away left her in deep debt. By the time the baby came, she was struggling, and eventually, she had to sell the house, our old house, or at least it had been ours until she had made it hers. It was the last remaining piece of our shared life, and now it was gone. And then came her friends, or rather, what was left of them. You see, people like her surround themselves with others who are just like them, shallow, selfish, and only present when things are fun. When things got hard, when she needed help, money, a place to stay, someone to watch the baby, Those friends vanished. One by one, they disappeared. I suppose her charm couldn't hold their attention anymore. In the end, she had gotten what she thought she wanted, freedom. But it was the kind of freedom that comes with a steep price. She lost everything that mattered, because she had never truly valued any of it to begin with. I didn't feel sorry for her. I wasn't sitting somewhere celebrating her downfall, reveling in her misfortune. No, I just didn't care. That part of my life was over. She was a chapter one had closed, and I had no intention of reopening it. Some people think they're escaping something, but in reality, they're running straight into a wall. That was her. She ran, and when she hit that wall, there was no one left to catch her. Years passed. My life had moved on, not in any flashy, dramatic way, but quietly, steadily. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And then, one day, she found me. I was at home, sitting by the window with a book in hand, when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and yet, when I opened the door, there she stood. She looked the same, still composed, carrying herself with that air of confidence that I had once admired. Her eyes met mine, steady but searching, as if she were trying to gauge my reaction. Seeing her again stirred nothing inside me but a cold, detached indifference. I had no idea how she had found me, and honestly, I didn't care. The only thing I felt was disgust. She stood there for a moment, staring at me, as if waiting for permission to speak. I didn't give it. Finally, she started talking. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I've been trying to find you for years," she said, her voice trembling. "I need to tell you how sorry I am. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, and I've paid for it every single day since." She paused, waiting for some sort of acknowledgement, but I didn't give her anything. I just leaned back against the doorframe, watching her, enjoying the discomfort in her expression as she shifted under my gaze. "I thought I could have everything," she continued, her hands trembling as they clasped together. "I thought I could find excitement somewhere else and still keep you. But I was wrong. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone." Her words spilled out, desperate and messy, full of regret. She told me about how her life had unraveled. The failed relationships, the debt, the loneliness. She even admitted that she had been left pregnant and alone, abandoned by the man who had fathered her child. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at me and begged, "Please, I need you. I've never stopped needing you." I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. I wanted to make sure she understood that this wasn't a conversation. It was the end of one. "You made your choice," I said, my voice calm, steady but firm. "You were never attracted to me. Remember? I wasn't your type. So go find your type and see if he wants you now." She flinched, as if my words had struck her physically. But I didn't stop there. "I don't care what you regret. I don't care how much you've suffered. That's your burden, not mine. Don't ever show your face to me again." I stepped back, closed the door, and walked away without a second thought. I didn't need her explanations, her apologies, or her regret. That part of my life was over. There was no reason to reopen it. As I walked away, I thought about the man I had become. Losing her had been painful. It tore me apart in ways I never thought possible. But in the end, it forced me to rebuild, and I am still rebuilding. Sometimes, the greatest gift you can give someone who betrays you is your absence. And sometimes, the best thing you can do for yourself is to walk away and never look back. In losing her, I found myself, and I realized that was the only closure I would ever need.